Am I live?
Yep.
Rob?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome, everybody, to the Green Hotel webinar series. My name is Dan Ruben. I'm the Executive Director of Boston Green Tourism. We're an organization of 30-some hotels in Greater Boston that are improving our environmental performance. We also put on webinars like this. We put on workshops, and we consult with hotels on improving their environmental performance. The objectives of this webinar series are to help hotels reduce energy, water, waste, and toxins, and by doing so, helping hotels achieve green certification. This is the sixth and last of our webinars. We also have one-on-one training sessions, 2-hour training sessions. We have 2 slots still available, so if you're interested, please contact me. I want to give a special thank you to the people who helped me produce this series, in particular Rob Gilliman, who managed this for the EPA and who's been a fantastic support throughout. Also Siganthi Simon of EPA Region 4, Marcus Rivas of Region 7, George Burgos of EPA Region 1, and Peter Cook, my partner in this process from the Manomet Center for Conservation Sciences. I also want to give a shout out to the National Sustainable Lodging Network. This is a social networking site for green hotels. It allows people to network with each other on your questions, your challenges, and your successes. It also has lots of announcements, news feeds, blogs, and it mentions events and webinars. So go to sustainablelodging.org after this presentation and see what it's all about. Today, we're going to talk about, I'm going to talk about waste management for hotels. Then David Holly will talk about green cleaning, and George Tregay will talk about LED lighting. And we'll have questions hopefully throughout, but certainly at the end. So when you have questions, whenever you have questions, please write them down and send them in. Hopefully we'll get to all of them, but if we can't, we will get back to you individually after the session. These presentations will be eventually posted, and when they are, I will notify everybody who registered for at least one event. I list a number of links in this presentation. The other speakers do also. And so if you want the material soon, just send me a note and I'll send you all 3 presentations. Okay, let's now talk about waste management for hotels. And the material I draw from here is mostly, I look at hotels that have very successful waste management programs, and I look at what they do and why they're successful, and incorporate their ideas into this presentation. I'm going to talk about the benefits of a good waste management program, how to organize a great program, then the guts of how do you reduce waste, reuse it, and recycle it, and lastly a bit about buying recycled content products and resources. So what are the benefits of having, I should say, a great waste management program? Number one is cost reduction. Good waste management programs mean that hotels have to purchase less stuff, and then they have less stuff to throw away, and they recycle their stuff better, so they have lower hauling bills. Also, recycling is noticed by your customers more than any other green initiative. So for example, a customer might not know that you have the most energy efficient boiler in the world, but when they want to recycle their soda can, and they can, they'll think of you, they'll recognize you as a green facility. Good waste management programs score points on RFPs and green certifications. They help comply with state waste bans. They help the environment, and they help the local economy. So when you buy your products that are sometimes manufactured overseas, once you reuse them or recycle them, they benefit your local economy and they create jobs locally. So, how do you organize your waste management program? First, as an overview, consider improving your program in priority order: reduce, reuse, and recycle. In other words, the biggest gains you have are from waste reduction. Second, you need to have a great audit and know what you're throwing away and what are your opportunities for improvement. Oftentimes, this involves asking your managers and staff, how do you reduce waste? What do you buy that's not necessary? How could you reuse and recycle better? They're the ones that use your materials, and so they often have the best idea of what you could do. Then it's important to set policies with goals, accountability, and a training plan for staff. You need to keep good statistics on what you want to measure and what you could act on, very importantly. And then identifying companies that will take your materials for reuse and recycling based on their price, the convenience for you, and more. More than perhaps any other kind of environmental program, it's important for getting your staff's cooperation. It's important to have a great training program, sometimes in different languages, to hold your staff accountable, to put, for example, recycling into their job description and to put it into your labor contract. Some hotels have staff commitment letters where staff sign a letter saying that they will comply with the hotel's recycling program, for example. And the notion behind that is when people sign their name to something, they're much more likely to carry through. Something that I've seen that's effective is that some hotels take their staff on field trips to recycling plants or to organizations that reuse the hotel's products. It makes it a lot real for the staff so they understand why they're recycling or reusing the hotel's goods. I know the Intercontinental Boston makes a point of sending their goods to countries where the staff come from. So they have a lot of staff from Haiti. They send products to Haiti, and they then have pictures and reports of the staff that of the goods that are used in Haiti. Developing a communication plan for non-English speakers is very important for many hotels. You could include pictures of what goes into what bins, and that could be helpful for your non-English speakers. And then to make the program fun, to recognize staff and departments that do well, and to give them incentives. Okay, now let's talk about waste reduction. Refillable amenities dispensers are growing in use. There's some chains that don't use them, but there are others do, and certainly a lot of independents do. Using refillable amenity dispensers could replace all those thousands of little jars of little containers of soap, lotion, shampoo, and conditioner. It also saves a lot of money. Using highly concentrated cleaning supplies take up less space, and it leads to a lot less lugging things around. You want to move to, hotels will want to move to LEDs mostly for energy and cost reduction purposes, but it's also a matter of waste reduction because they last 5 times longer than fluorescents and 25 times longer than incandescents. To be purchasing less, storing less, and throwing away less. A fairly new product on the market is low pressure drop, high efficiency filters, particularly for air handling units on your roofs. It also might be cost effective for your PTAC units. They last 5 times longer, so all of those filters that need to be thrown away on a regular basis, if you use these products, you'll save quite a lot of space in your garbage containers. Reducing food waste. So hotels have restaurants. Some of them now track their food waste and identify their wasteful purchases, and by doing that raise staff awareness. It's been found that they could reduce their pre-consumer food waste by 50% and hence purchase 2 to 6% less food, saving a whole lot of money, and then reducing their waste disposal costs. I list a couple useful links here. For big hotels might consider the lean path system as probably the best system for getting at food waste. In some states now there are food waste bans, and so hotels have to figure out some way of reducing their food waste. And some do it with on-site dehydration machines, biodigesters, or pulpers. These technologies are fairly new. For restaurants, using reusables, washable table linens or no table linens, washable dinnerware, reusable coffee filters, and condiments in bulk dispensers all reduce waste. We had a talk, I believe at our last webinar, about eliminating bottled water by using filtered water instead. There are a number of companies that do this. Vivro is one of them. You could install bottle filling spouts on water fountains and use hotel-branded bottles. Other ideas, using carpet squares, so you could replace just the stained or worn-out carpet. Using modular mattresses, so you could replace just the mattress tops instead of the whole mattress. Eliminating unrequested newspapers, double-siding the documents that are still printed on paper in your hotel. Many hotels have gone to paperless check-in and check-out. Converting your maintenance and housekeeping tracking systems to paperless mobile-based systems is both more efficient as well as eliminates a whole lot of paper. Asking your suppliers to reduce excess packaging is often helpful, and getting permanent drinking mugs for staff. Okay, now let's talk about reuse. Some hotels, many hotels, donate their used linens, blankets, towels, toiletries, old uniforms, etc., to shelter and relief agencies, and they're well appreciated for this. Food that is still good to be eaten can go to hunger relief agencies, and particularly in many cities, this is a common practice. And then food that they won't take could go to pig farmers. Furniture, lots of hotels need to do something with their nicked up furniture, or they replace their furniture every 8 years or so. Instead of replacing it, it could be refinished, and there are a number of companies, I listed just a couple, but there are companies both locally and nationally that refinish furniture, saving 75–80% of the cost of furniture and making your furniture look like new. It can now be done in ways that don't have smell and don't create dust. So I encourage you to look into it if you're not doing it already. Furniture could also be donated. Mattresses could be renewed rather than purchased new. If I had one more talk for this webinar series, I would consider a talk about pillow restoration, since hotels throw away so many bulky pillows. They could be restored at a fraction of the price. There's only one company in the country that does it. It's called Harris Pillow, and they give you your choice of either buying the machine so you could do it yourself, or of coming and on a regular basis and doing it for you. When you do big renovations, some hotels achieve reuse and recycling rates of over 80%, some even over 90%. I won't go through this, but look at each material and figure out what could be reused and what could be recycled. It takes a lot of careful planning and scheduling, but doing it could save you a whole lot of money as well as have great environmental benefits. Your toner cartridges could be shipped to remanufacturers, and then you could buy the remanufactured toner cartridge and save a lot of money. Your cell phones could be donated to the armed forces, and clean garbage can liners can be reused. Pallets, you could have vendors take them back. Torn towels could be used as cleaning rags. For your dry cleaning, instead of getting all that plastic every time, you could use reusable canvas bags. And then there are many material exchanges now, both state and regionally, and from private companies. Okay, now let's talk about recycling. I've mentioned some of the things above when I talked about how to organize your waste management program. Let me go into greater detail about what makes a great recycling program. What do hotels with great programs do? Number one, I think they have a champion, somebody that is accountable, somebody that leads the audit, that leads the training program, and that gets in the face of departments that aren't doing a good job. Frequent audits are important, at least annually. Oftentimes the haulers could help you, and I'll talk more about them in another slide or two. Keeping monthly statistics, because what gets measured gets managed. Having your champion or your green team take action when audits and reports fall below your targets, and they do. Recycling programs, the results slide unless you keep the statistics and take appropriate action. Keep your staff involved and accountable. If possible, put recycling bins next to every trash container. They shall look different than the trash containers and be clearly marked. I recognize that recycling bins are expensive, but they will improve your recycling program and reduce your reduce your waste hauling bills. And then coordinating with your haulers is very important. Speaking of haulers, you could find a hauler for virtually any commodity that you have. I listed one source, the earth911.com website, but lots of states have good resources also. Haulers could often identify the best equipment you could use, good staff ed materials, your best collection schedules, and whether balers make sense. They could help you design whether you should convert a trash compactor to recycling or not. Should your hotel buy a baler? Well, ask the hauler, and then do the math. Consider that you could get better prices for things like baled cardboard, but you also have the expense of the baler, the cost of running an electric line to it, and consider space and labor costs also. Many states, or most states at this point, have single-stream recycling where you could commingle cardboard, paper, and various other recyclables. It's easier, it saves space, it requires less training, but you often get the prices you could get back from the materials are not as good. So you might look at something like cardboard, which tends to come in one big place in the loading dock, and segregating it if you could get a better price for it. For your hauling contracts, sometimes you could have a great recycling program but not realize the financial benefits until you could rework your contract. Sometimes you have to wait until your contract is over and then write up another one that's better. So review your contracts. You might have to reduce the size or frequency of the size of your trash containers or the frequency of pickups. You might need to eliminate volume requirements that discourage recycling and consider bidding trash and recycling separately. Indeed, do periodic audits. For the audits, make sure you check the departmental waste baskets, the recycling bins, your dumpsters at the end of every shift. Look to see, are the daily recycling items being recycled. It could help you to use clear trash bags. It makes the audits a lot easier. And then take pictures of instances where departments are not doing the right thing, and show them to the department heads and staff when, let's say, cans and paper are put into the trash rather than the recycling. 5 or 8 years ago, it was difficult to find beautiful recycling bins that befit beautiful hotels, but that's no longer the case. There are lots of companies that offer beautiful recycling bins. Look at your everyday items and make sure that they're recycled well. Evaluate what items you want to recycle and what are profitable to recycle. For your food waste, we mentioned reducing food waste above. For the food waste that you still have, find haulers that take it away, along with yard waste, wax cardboard, and find haulers that will take them to compost facilities. You'd use fryer oil. Hotels generally have to recycle them. Restaurants have to recycle them. But now they could also consider also making them into biodiesel or burning them to make electricity. In other words, having them sent to places that will make them into biodiesel or burn them for electricity. You could also filter your fryer oil so you could use it again and again. Electronics can now be recycled, and I encourage you to consider this. Other items that could be recycled, mattresses. It's important to recycle fluorescent bulbs because they have mercury. Batteries can be hazardous as well, and it's important to recycle them. Your soap and shampoos can be recycled into soap and shampoo and conditioner. Global Soap and Clean the World are the two companies that do this well. Also, your used soil, plants, landscaping products, etc., can be composted, reused, or recycled. It's also important that you close the loop, that you buy recycled content products so there are markets for what you recycle. For your office paper, consider buying 30% recycled content products. They should perform just as well. You could try going to 50 or 100% recycled content products and see if they, in the past they had a higher rate of paper jams, but you could try that out. Also, get recycled content in your tissues, napkins, menu paper, and cardboard. I've mentioned toner cartridges. Buy remanufactured toner cartridges and save 3/4 of the price. Look for glass, carpet, and these other materials I list here. For computers, look at the epeat.net website. And then try to use recycled content to go containers, purchase recycled content to go containers for your restaurants. Here are a couple good resources. Again, contact me if you want them right away before they're posted. And that's how to develop a good waste management program. Are there any questions?
Yes, Dan, there are. One question that came in has to do with how are mattresses renewed, if you could explain that process.
I can't. I did see a great presentation from a company in Wisconsin that does it, and they showed us a 3-minute film on how to do it. It's a multi-step process, and I can't explain it, but they look at each aspect of the of the mattress, and see if they need to be need new material, need to have the materials replaced. So all I could say is I've seen it done, and it's done well, but I couldn't describe it better than that.
Okay. Another question that we have has to do with furniture refinishing. Is it a messy, smelly process for hotels?
You know, the answer is there are probably many different furniture remanufacturers, and it's something that you need to check on. I listed a couple sources that do it very well. You know, for example, they have sanders that have a vacuum right with the sander, so sawdust doesn't go anywhere. They use low VOC products that don't off-gas. There are hotels, for example, let's say in the Northeast, when in the winter, when the occupancy rate is lower, they hire some of these companies and they do like 20 rooms a day. And within a day, those rooms could be turned over and be ready for use again. So, you know, it's very important that you find the right company, that you get, you know, referrals, that you specify in your contract that they clean up extremely well and they use products that don't off-gas.
Great. Another question has to do with the notion of food waste. And can you really consider machines that pulp food waste and send it down the drain as environmentally friendly?
A good question. I don't think it's the best solution. The best solution is reducing your waste in the first place, but obviously there's still going to be some food waste. In looking at the best solutions for food waste, there are it depends on a lot of factors, and I haven't seen great studies on it that compares the life cycle of each different option. But in terms of putting your food waste down the sewer, it's important to check with your water authority to see if that's acceptable. So in the Boston area right now, it is deemed acceptable, but there may be some wastewater treatment systems in other localities that deem it unacceptable. So it's important to check first.
Okay. And another question has to do with the pillow restoration machine. Is it better to buy a pillow restoration machine or have a service restore your pillows?
I think if you're a big facility, it makes sense to buy the machine itself. We have a hotel in Boston that just bought the machine. And they get trained on using the machine. It takes about, I think, 4 minutes per pillow to restore it, to restore the pillow, and you just have a lot more flexibility, and you could go at your own schedule. I think in the longer run, it costs a lot less to buy the machine. So I recommend purchasing it if you're a pretty big facility, or if you have, or if you're a hotel group, buy one machine for the group and send it around the facility from facility to facility.
Okay.
Are there any other questions, or should we move to the next speaker?
I think we can move to the next speaker.
Okay.
So let me
well, let me then introduce David Holly. David Holly is the president of Don't Panic Productions, Inc., a media development company that produces training and marketing materials for companies and organizations in the cleaning industry. David is the co-author of Green Cleaning for Dummies, Green Sales Tips, and the Business of Green Cleaning. He is the founder of Green Clean University. He is also a member of the Ashkin Group, a consulting firm dedicated to greening the cleaning industry. As a member of the Ashkin Group, David works with companies and organizations at every facet of the industry, from manufacturers and distributors, BSCs and end users, to government and nonprofit advocacy groups. David, take it away.
Thank you, Dan. I guess I really don't need to introduce myself. That was a great introduction. I appreciate it. Well, today we're going to be talking about green cleaning in hotels. Three basic areas I'd like to cover in the time we have are explode some of the common myths about green cleaning, then talk about what green cleaning really is, and finally, how you can implement a program. Some of the common myths include green cleaning products don't work as well as traditional products, or green cleaning products are simply too expensive compared to normal products. Green cleaning is too complicated to implement in our operation, and one of my favorite is that green cleaning's a fad. If I just keep my head down, it'll all blow over and life can go on as normal. Well, these simply aren't true any longer. I've been with the Ashkin Group doing this now for almost 15 years, and I will admit, a decade ago, those products that were being sold as green probably in general weren't as effective as traditional products. However, over the past decade, every product manufacturer has come up with green lines and green products. And in fact, that's where the bulk of modern research and development money goes, is coming up with the green products. So at this stage, we can say green cleaning products work at least as well as traditional products, and in many cases, because it's newer technology, they work even better. The question about green cleaning products being too expensive, again, a decade ago, it was true. Green cleaning products were more expensive. Just a matter of supply and demand. However, again, because all the research and development is going into the green cleaning products over the past decade, these products have become at least cost competitive with traditional products. And in many cases, because they're super concentrated, that the same dollar per gallon for the concentrate will actually make much more ready-to-use product. So again, green cleaning products today are as effective and cost competitive with anything else you can find on the market. Green cleaning is too complicated to implement in our operation. That's kind of an excuse. Any change is complicated, that's true. But as you'll see in a few more slides, there are plenty of roadmaps available to help make this much easier to do. And I think by now, everyone's aware that green cleaning is not a fad. As I said, I've been doing this for 15 years, and frankly, today green cleaning is the ante if you were playing a card game. If you're not cleaning green, you're just not even in the game. And now we're getting on to things like sustainability. So let's look at what green cleaning is. It's a concept or an approach to cleaning, a different way of looking at cleaning. One way to look at it is that it's a set of lenses that help us focus on reducing health and environmental impacts. You know, a decade ago when I was doing presentations, I would start a presentation by asking people in the audience, why do you clean? And by far the most common answer was, well, we've got to make the place look good. Can't have a lot of dirt and dust and things laying around. In a hotel, certainly the room has to look clean. And that's the difference between green cleaning and what we might call traditional cleaning. Because when we think about green cleaning, we're talking about a different way of thinking about it, a different way of looking at it. Instead of cleaning for appearance, we're cleaning to remove contaminants from the indoor environment. We're cleaning to remove things, not just move them around. The easiest way to think about that is to imagine dusting with a traditional feather duster or wool duster. As I hit the area to be dusted, that duster will pick up maybe 10% of the dust. The rest is thrown back into the air for everyone to enjoy. On the other hand, if I think about green cleaning, what I need to do is remove that dust. So I'll probably reach for a microfiber cloth. And now as I move it across the surface to be dusted, over 90% of the dust is coming into the cloth that I can launder later. And so I'm not leaving a lot of dust in the environment. So the neat thing about green cleaning is I not only remove the contaminants and soils and things that could impact health, but the place is still going to look clean. I get the best of both worlds. Whereas if I approach cleaning just for appearance, in fact, I may not really be cleaning. So the simplest definition of green cleaning is cleaning to protect health without harming the environment. And a thing to keep in mind is it's a journey. There's not a light switch you can flip that today I'm cleaning traditionally, tomorrow everything's green. It's a journey. And what we have today is going to be better 5 years from now. We can't make it perfect, but we can make it much, much better. And that's our goal. So to develop a program, one of the things you want to keep in mind is don't reinvent the wheel. There are a number of resources out there, or roadmaps, that will help you put together a program. This is why it's misleading to say it's too complicated, because there are these roadmaps out there. The Green Key program specifically for hotels. U.S. Green Building Council has its LEED rating system, and they also have it for the hospitality industry. Healthy Schools Campaign has the quick and easy guide for green cleaning in schools. And one of the things about green cleaning is whether you're a hotel, an office building, a hospital, a school, yes, there are differences, but by and large, there is a lot of commonality. So these roadmaps, regardless of where they come from, can be a major assistance as you put your program together. One of the first things everyone looks at when they think about green cleaning are the chemicals. And there are 3 eco-label, recognized eco-labels here in the United States and in North America that will help you ensure that the products you are buying are in fact green and have met certain standards. There's Green Seal, There's Eco-Logo, which is now part of UL, and of course Design from the Environment from the EPA. All three of them are recognized by all of the certification agencies like U.S. Green Building Council as acceptable ways to ensure that your products are green. The Carpet and Rug Institute can help you find the best, most effective, efficient vacuum cleaners and carpet maintenance products and equipment. And there are another number of other products that you're going to want to look at as you put together a green cleaning program. We won't go into a lot of detail, but again, those roadmaps will help you find a way through that. But certainly you want to be looking at microfiber. Dan was just talking about recycling products. You want to make sure that the equipment you're using is durable and ergonomic. Consider things like snow and ice melt and certainly pest management products. Now, there are some products or some product categories where there are not green standards yet. So again, remember, this is an approach to cleaning, a concept. Think of it as a continuum from a nasty product to something that's very green. And as you look at some of these products that maybe don't have eco-labels, you can try to look for the options that you can see will have the least impact on health and the least impact on the environment, and make the choice on that end of the continuum versus the other. And one of the things you really want to look at are some innovative products. The cleaning industry is very mature. We've been around a long time. And for many years, it got pretty boring. It just became a marketing game. But over the last several years, especially because of the approach to green and sustainability, there's been a wealth of new innovative products and equipment in our industry. In fact, there are products for cleaning that don't use traditional chemicals at all. They use electrolyzed water that clean very effectively and make good sanitizers. So these are some options that not only can make the cleaning process safer, more effective, but also more efficient and save money. We look at implementing a green cleaning program, and we're going to look at 10 basic steps. That sounds like a lot, but again, you'll realize as you go through, they're pretty basic and obvious. First is, of course, to build a strategy. You know, the old saying, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. So you really are building your roadmap here in the beginning. What's your goal? As your overall goal is to green your hotel, of course, but along the way, where are the waypoints? And pick out some that are close in so that you can keep moving forward. That keeps people interested and excited, and then you lay out your map. Identify some of the barriers. You know, there are going to be some costs involved. You may have contracts with existing vendors that have to be honored. And identify some of the folks that can help you out. Certainly your vendors. As I said, every major manufacturer has a green line. They all have various training programs. They have suggestions. If you're buying through distribution, the distributors have programs. All of these people have the material there to help you. They're advocates. The Healthy Schools Campaign, Green Key, TripAdvisor. There are folks like that that have been through this and have various things available that can help. And you might be surprised that you have a number of people on your staff that have been thinking about this and have actually been reading about it and thinking about what they would do if only we could do something. So you might be surprised as you start talking about it to find the people coming out of the woodwork that want to help. The next step is getting an agreement within your operation. If you have a green team or a sustainability team, obviously that's a key place to start. Dan mentioned for recycling to find a champion. That's always excellent, and anytime you're coming up with a new program, someone who really wants to keep things moving, will keep track of the day-to-day materials and ensure things stay on track. Identify who will be involved. Make a decision about whether you maybe want to pilot this as opposed to just going full force right away. A pilot program can be a very effective way to work out the kinks. It's not a question of testing it to see if it works, but it's a question of identifying the roadblocks, the hiccups, so that as you expand it throughout the facility or throughout your group, you've identified those, put programs in place to help ensure that it moves smoothly. Again, as Dan said, metrics. You can't manage what you don't measure. Identify what are going to be the key measures you're looking for, and then set up a plan to capture those. Try to identify any special issues that have to be worked through. And then get an agreement between all the folks who are going to be involved that this is what we're doing, this is the process, and they're buying in. One of the most important things in this whole process is to conduct a baseline survey. Again, if you don't know where you're starting, it's hard to know where you're going or how you're going to get there. So there are a number of things in housekeeping that you want to take a look at and just identify what's there. What are the chemicals we're currently using? What does it say on the MSDS sheets? Are they hazardous? Are they identified as hazardous? Are they maybe green label already? What kind of paper are you using? Dan talked about closing the loop and buying paper with recycled content. Very important. Liners. You know, the most important part of a trash can liner, I think, is matching the liner to the can. I'm sure all of you have gone to hotels, I know I have, where the liner in the trash can up by the desk is so much smaller than the can, it's basically a drum. You know, toss something in there and it bounces right off because it's just stretched across the top. Not only is that not going to capture anything, but it's a waste of the plastic. You know, you end up just taking the liner out and putting it in the can along with everything else, and the liner doesn't do any good. So matching the size of the liner to the cans is a really big step in making sure that we don't waste plastic. Then, of course, look at your equipment situation, not only how effective it is, but is it in good repair, and the other products you're using. Take a look at the storage areas. Are they clean? Are things easy to find? The general condition, building exterior and entryways, what's being tracked in, what can be done to minimize what comes into the building, which just makes cleaning that much easier. Take a look at your standard operating procedures. Do you have them? Are they documented? When's the last time you've gone through and audited them to ensure that they're as effective and efficient as possible? And of course, Dan talked about waste management and recycling. But then there's pest management. Is there a program in place, often called integrated pest management, that doesn't rely on someone coming by and spraying chemicals, but rather uses different ways to maintain a pest-free environment that are actually much safer for your guests, your staff, and much less impactful on the environment? Then we want to develop the plan. There's basically, we call the 3 buckets as we put a plan together. After you go through your baseline, you identify those changes that you can make easily and with relatively no cost. Quite often, unless there's contracts in place, changing the chemicals and dispensing equipment is a no-brainer. It's easy. Your distributor will help make that happen, or the supplier. And yes, there's training involved, but it's not a huge cost change. Looking at entry mats to help keep dirt out as opposed to cleaning it later can make a big difference. And again, working with your vendor can make those very economical. Then there's, at the other extreme, there's the expensive things, the hard to change. There may be major equipment. It may mean replacing carpet extractors and things like that. And then there's the stuff in the middle, adding microfiber instead of using rags. Maybe changing vacuum cleaners. You know, I don't advocate throwing vacuum cleaners away just to change, but as they need to be changed, to identify the better vacuum cleaner, the more efficient and effective vacuum cleaner. So as I have to replace one, I replace it with a greener version. By identifying these 3 categories, it makes it much easier to develop the plan. And, you know, again, it's a continuum. You don't have to do everything at once. So start with the easy stuff. Make those changes, celebrate the successes, and keep moving forward. So we've talked about building a strategy, getting an agreement, conducting the baseline surveys, analyzing the data, developing the plan, and of course, getting the buy-in. Circle back to your team. Make sure they're totally bought in. Get to management. Make sure management's totally bought in. Because there's nothing worse than getting out and communicating it and then have it fall through because there wasn't the buy-in. So you always want to loop back and make sure that's there. Then the thing everyone always wants to talk about, products and equipment. Chemicals, vacuum cleaners, floor machines, and so on. Identify which ones you're going to change, how you're going to make those changes, and then whatever you're replacing, get it out of there. You don't want to leave it where people are going to get confused and wonder which to use. Identify your standard operating procedures. If you don't have them, it's time to put them in place. If you do, do an audit on them. Check them for the health impacts. Uh-oh. Can you hear me, Dan? Hello?
Hi, I can hear you.
Yeah, I could hear you. My phone was on mute, sorry.
Okay. I just lost my computer.
Rob, you could turn it over to my computer if you want, and I have David's slides up.
Okay.
David, could you see your talk at all?
No, but I did print it out.
Okay, so we're on slide 19. Procedures. Whoops.
Yep.
Show my screen. Okay. For people in the audience, sorry.
Yeah, I do apologize, folks. All right, ready to go?
I'm having trouble getting mine up now. Is it up, Rob? No.
Yes, it is. We can see your PowerPoint.
You can see mine, but we can't see David's. Oh, you turned the controls over to me, and I don't have David's talk. Rob, do you have a copy of David's talk?
No. Let me check.
Okay, I'll be able to get it in just a minute.
While they're doing that, to the audience, we were talking about implementing the program, and we're talking about standard operating procedures. And I'm sure you have things in place, but the real key as we move to a green program is to re-audit, reevaluate those procedures. Instead of just cleaning for appearance, we want to make sure that we're cleaning to reduce the health impacts on the staff, the cleaning staff, your internal staff, and certainly your guests. We want to think about people with special conditions and special needs and what we can do to accommodate their needs. And again, we want to look at this from reducing environmental impacts as well. And finally, we want to think about efficiencies. You know, one of the most important reasons for having standard operating procedures is that by doing things the same way, everyone doing it the same way, we can become much more efficient and save a lot of time. And of course, saving time is saving money. It also means when something doesn't work, because we have standard operating procedures, we can identify what the problem is and come back and fix it. Are you up, Dan?
I will be up in a few seconds.
So I have it up now. I just need to, I just have to get the correct slide on.
Okay, we're on 20 now.
Slide 20. Okay, I should be on slide 20.
And Rob, I have it up on mine if that's helpful too.
Okay. All right. In that case, I'm just going to bring it to you, Dan.
All right.
Okay, hang on 1 second. Okay, is it up?
Yep, you just have to expand the view.
Okay.
Perfect.
And I'll move this to slide 20.
Thank you so much for your patience. All right, training. Training is probably, in my mind, one of the most critical parts of building any program. Too often, we build a program, we put a lot of time and energy into it, but we really don't effectively train the people that have to use the program. We just sort of assume cleaning is cleaning, everyone knows how to do it. So really it starts with determining what type of training is necessary. Certainly if we've changed the standard operating procedures or implemented new ones, we want to make sure that we're training on the new procedures. But there may be product-specific training that's critical or important if we're changing products. And considering workplace hazards is another area that's important to focus on. Because again, remember, part of the whole point of green cleaning is to protect the health, and that includes the health of the people doing the cleaning. And again, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are a number of resources available. Dan mentioned something at the beginning of his talk about the sustainable lodging. The Green Lodging News has some excellent material. the Healthy Schools campaign again, the Green Cleaning Network, and your vendors, especially for things like product training. That's what they're there for. They talk about value-added sales, and part of that value they add is to help with that training. Next slide, please. Communications. And it kind of goes hand in glove with training. If we don't communicate what we're doing, it's hard to get people excited. And it's hard to get the ongoing support. So certainly we need to do that internal communication. Talk about the progress that's been made. Make sure the housekeeping staff is understanding what's going on and, importantly, why it's going on. Too often we just tell people, here's what you do, just do it. If they understand why they're doing it, why these changes are being made, again, you'll be surprised at the ideas they come back to you with that can make things even better, more effective, and more efficient. Communicate with your outside contractors. The fact that you have a green cleaning program, what you expect from them, how it impacts them, and how they impact it. And again, you're going to find they will come back with ideas to help you. Your vendors and the media, celebrate the successes. Make people aware of what's going on in your facility and why that makes this an even better place to be staying. Next slide. Finally, step 10 is feedback and continual improvement. Be aware of what's going on in the facilities. There's going to be changes, remodeling, refinishing of furniture that could impact how you clean or what you use to clean. Budgets may be changed. Generally, they aren't increased, but you need to be aware of it because that can affect procedures and how you become more efficient. Space requirements could change. Things are repurposed. Areas are repurposed. And, even your clientele, your guests, there could be a change in that profile over time that could impact how you clean and in what types of things you do to clean. Do occupant surveys. Get the feedback so that you can continually improve and modify your program to make it better, to meet your guests' needs and your staff needs. Try new products. Try some of that new technology. Or talk with your vendors about the new technology and understand what they're learning from what other people have tried. Because, again, there are many changes in our industry now, and things are becoming more efficient, more effective as they become greener and more sustainable. It's really a very exciting time in the cleaning industry. And keep that training going. Ongoing training keeps your people sharp, keeps things moving forward, and keeps them invested and bought in and part of the program, which is critical, especially in our industry. Next slide. This is just one of my favorite sayings from Margaret Mead. And because a lot of times we tend to think if I'm the champion, I'm all alone and there's nothing I can do. The fact is it's people like you that get excited that really do make things change. And that would be the next slide. It should be the end, right?
Yes. And given that we lost a couple minutes, Rob, I suggest we go straight to George Tregay, and then then afterwards we'll ask questions both from David Holly and George.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, David. That was terrific. Let me introduce George now. George Tregay has retired from a 40-year career in the aerospace engineering, specializing in optical measurement and equipment. During the last 7 years, he has volunteered with Waste Reduction Partners doing energy audits for commercial and government buildings in western North Carolina. George, when you're ready, take it away. George?
Hold on one second. I need to do something. Hi, George. You've just been unmuted.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
All right. All right. And if I shrink that out of the way, I'll be talking about LED lighting for hotels. And you have my first slide up on the screen, I hope.
Yes.
There's numerous articles that have been published as an overview to LED lighting, talking about their advantages. I would like to take this opportunity to dig a little deeper and talk about specific types of lighting, upgrades in particular, and that can involve the bulbs such as general purpose, flood, spot type items. For recessed lighting, you need to consider the whole fixture such as downlight and troffers. Outdoor lighting is an area where LEDs excel, and we'll touch on that as well. Let's see. I need my slide to advance.
George, if you the lower left, there should be an arrow that allows you to advance it. After that, you could hit your down button.
Well, page down isn't doing it at this point.
Right, so go to the lower left of your screen, and if you move your cursor around, you should see the down arrow.
Oh, I've got a back arrow, but that's not...
Try to the right of it. Yeah.
Okay.
So go to that same section, but just to the right of the arrow that you had.
Okay, there's a left arrow. Here we go.
There you go.
All right, something new. All right, before you start an upgrade, regardless of which type of lighting you're considering, you need to get two aspects into your specification. The first is the correct quantity of light, and standards have been established by the Illuminating Engineering Society. And in this table, what you'll see is different areas that lighting level that's recommended differ by a factor of 10. And that's the reason it's so important to identify the amount of light you need, and that'll maximize your energy savings. So you need to do an assessment of where you are with your current fixture. You're going to be measuring that. Identify the fixture output in terms of lumens, and then comparing the lighting levels you have. You identify targets that may be more or less than your current lighting level. And that's something you'll need a light meter for. Possibly you could get your lighting supplier to help you with that. The second aspect that applies to all types of light sources is the quality of the light. You've probably seen some of these parameters on the specs or on labels. Essentially, color temperature is what's going to set the tone for the area, and you want to go from the warm, low temperature values up through the bluer and whiter ones, depending on the area you're working in. We have grown up with incandescent lights, and that's really established our sense of color, and for this purpose, it's gotten an index of 100. Fluorescent discharge lamps, LED sources distribute the light differently across the spectrum, and that will affect the color of objects. So color rendering index, or CRI, is the aspect that will give you a measure of how well you're going to reproduce color. If you're in retail spaces or artwork, it's important to have that value at 80 or above. Okay, now let's get into LEDs more specifically. I've listed some advantages off to the right. You can read down through that list. What's typical in discussions of LEDs is a table similar to the one shown here, where you have incandescents, halogen-type bulbs, CFLs, and LEDs. Since you need to compare the amount of light, you need to look at the lumen level of the source, and from left to right, you see how the wattage can be reduced by going to the more recent lighting technology. Typically, the LEDs are listed as having the lowest wattage, but in fact, both CFLs and LEDs spread over a range of wattages for a given amount of light. At the bottom of the slide, I've listed a couple sources. There's Energy Star is an excellent place to identify the performance characteristics of light bulb. Another one that you may find useful is this Design Light Consortium that you can reach through the website listed on the chart. The message here essentially is if you've still got incandescent or halogen bulbs, those certainly are going to be a top priority for getting energy and cost reduction. I mentioned that there's a range of performance for the CFLs, but we can see that here if you look at the input in watts along the horizontal axis and the output in lumens on the left scale. The incandescents and halogen lights are off to the right and are very inefficient in terms of producing light. The efficiency improves as you go from right to left, and you can see that the red symbols for LEDs extend farthest to the left and would be the most efficient light sources. And so when you're looking at a project, you need to specify the lumens per watt to get the maximum efficiency. For general purpose light bulbs, that number you'd probably want at 75 lumens per watt, and that would be items falling or to the left of the red line that's just barely visible in this chart. If you're dealing with decorative bulbs, candelabras, chandelier installations, you'd find a very similar relationship among the lighting products, and there you'd be looking probably to get 60 lumens per watt. And the numbers I'm recommending are in fact above the minimum levels for Energy Star. Okay, as we go through the different types, we'll talk about some key considerations. Here I wanted to point out that LEDs have a different distribution spatially of the light. It really makes sense to test those in the fixture, make sure it's satisfactory. Another kind of quirk, I've come across two different LED bulbs that actually interfered with an FM radio. I have other bulbs that don't do that, but certainly that would be something to check if these would be ending up in your guest rooms. The prices have been falling very rapidly. You can buy these products for less than $10 for the lower outputs. $20 gets you the higher output range, and at those levels they can be very effective in terms of a project cost to reduce your energy consumption. Cost analysis is probably the most challenging aspect of an LED upgrade, in the sense that you need to get a balanced assessment of it. And what I mean by that is you'll have LEDs with a fairly high initial cost, but a very long life that could exceed 10 years. And so I'm going to give you a personal recommendation, is that you really look in a 3 to 5 year time frame. That's going to balance that initial cost so that you consider the operation over time, but not so long as the life of the bulb, which could extend 10 years or more, and doesn't show how the initial cash out life to purchase the first bulb impacts your cost flow. What you have here is an example of 3,000 hours per year, so this would be like a 4-year case. And at the outset on the left, at zero time essentially, you'll have the purchase price, the installation labor, and rebates we'll be talking about shortly. As you operate that bulb over time, you're paying for electricity, and the cost, cumulative cost rises. Incandescent bulbs with their short life burn out and are replaced, and you can see that in the vertical steps. So rapidly incandescents become the most expensive option. I wanted to use this chart to show how the similar wattages of LEDs and CFLs means that they'll both be lower than an incandescent, but it actually may take some time for the LED device to have the lowest cumulative cost over the operating period. And maybe just one more note here is that there may be other reasons you choose the LEDs, not simply the cost. So the factors that you'd want to include when you're doing your cost analysis would be identify the wattage, the life of the bulb, how many times it's going to need to be replaced over the period you've considered, and then essentially walk through the price, rebates, installation labor, operating costs with your effective rate for electricity. And to compare it with other alternatives, you're going to include the replacement cost, depending on the number of replacements, and the replacement labor. The numbers I've used here are a little bit arbitrary. You really need, particularly for the labor, to identify what's appropriate for your situation. Moving on to other applications, this chart shows how you have LED products now for most situations that you'd be considering a lighting upgrade, including outdoor and very high intensity LED sources, such as the street lights listed towards the bottom of this. I've mentioned the lumens per watt as being an important specification parameter. Taken from this report, you can see the average values, but I need to reinforce that there's going to be a range of performance, in fact a rather sizable range in performance, noting that the best performing product could be 30% or more better than even the average. So as we go through these other devices, we'll be reinforcing why you want to look for the highest performing in terms of lumens per watt. LED directional lamps, as pictured here, have 3 times the lumens per watt of typical halogen lamps, and will be probably comparable with CFLs. And so there's some recommended efficiencies in terms of lumens per watt listed for the spots as well as the smaller M16 type bulbs. I've listed a few other considerations here that the very low power consumption of LEDs means that existing dimmers may not have been designed for that low of a wattage on the circuit, and so you need to verify if you're going to be using existing dimmers that they're compatible with the proposed lights you'll be putting in. If you get into these small MR16s or similar lamps, there you may have transformers, and that's another place just to verify the compatibility of the units. Since the small MR16s can be used in retail situations, color rendering index is something to specify as well. Turning to essentially downlights, and here you have a situation where the amount of light reaching your registration desk or the other area in the room depends not only on the light source itself, but on the housing, the downlight assembly. You really want to be looking at the performance of the combination of the light source and its housing and assembly. As with the previous slide, checking with existing dimmers is a good thing to do, and here you want to be looking actually for the performance in lumens per watt of the full assembly and make sure that that will perform to your satisfaction. Linear fluorescents have a number of paths to proceed. You can have units where essentially you replace the fluorescent lamp itself with an LED assembly. There's a variety of retrofit kits that you can are available, where you'd be modifying the fixtures that you have. What I'd like to point out is that raises some issues, especially if you're modifying fixtures. We won't be able to talk about all the aspects, but you're getting into things that can affect the certification of that assembly. And down below is listed one of these fact sheets that goes into much more detail about what to consider if you're doing replacement lamps or retrofit kits. I'd certainly encourage you to be looking at replacing the whole unit because you'll get the benefit of an integrated design. Those are certainly available, and you can get them with certainly good efficiency. Outdoor lighting is a place, might not be the first thing you think of considering for a lighting upgrade. It actually is probably one of the better paths to use for LEDs because the very nature of an LED lets you control the directionality of the light. And for outside lighting, that has a huge benefit because you can provide more even lighting, say, on a sidewalk with an LED unit that you can with spaced, say, metal halide lamps. So you can reduce actually the lumens that you require out of each fixture because you're putting the light much more where you need it. Another rather significant advantage can be that you can control the stray light and make sure that it doesn't get into your guest rooms. I've certainly had to pull the curtains at night to keep a rather annoying outside light from keeping me awake. Doing the analysis, the cost analysis, credits, incentives, rebates, they come in lots of shapes and sizes, can really be something that jump-starts a project. Common place where you can find information for state, federal, and local programs is this Desire database. I've listed the website here. The caution is just make sure you spell it right so that you get to the information you're after. Utilities are now very likely to have incentives or rebate programs. I've listed several here. The size of the rebates for certain types of fixtures can be large, $75 to $100. That certainly goes a long way to enabling a project. The bottom two items listed here, and they may be at other utilities as well, is a program where you request an energy audit. They'll come in, look at the lighting, make recommendations, and they can actually be then the contractor for making those changes. The payment or the incentive of up to 70% would be paid by the utility directly to that contractor, and you would only have responsibility for the balance. And they take care of the installation, identify the products, and so on. So those could be a very advantageous way to enable a project. Okay, I think we're pretty much on time to wrap things up. Before you start any lighting upgrade, you do need to do some homework in terms of identifying the light levels and the lumens you're going to need as you upgrade fixtures. Make sure that you've considered color temperature and color rendering index in writing the requirements. For replacing bulbs, you want to specify Energy Star ratings. They'll include 20 or more parameters of that lamp or bulb, not just its efficiency, but when you get to the efficiency in terms of lumens per watt, it's important to pick items at the high end of that range. That's going to give you the most cost savings for your project. There will be some watch-outs in terms of trying a unit out, making sure the distribution of light, the color is really what you need for that area. And if you're into dimmers or transformers on the circuit, check compatibility there as well. For recessed fixtures, there's lots of paths to go. I would recommend that you include in your assessment replacing the whole fixture and take advantage of the integration of the light source and reflectors or other lenses that go with it. For outside lighting, that's very definitely an area to look into because it can be much more uniform and do the same job with less lumen output required from the head of the light. So very definitely LEDs can be cost competitive now. I'm seeing them when I walk around different sites in terms of stores and things. The incentives are very significant. And this is today. Next year, you'll probably have better performance, and the prices are continue to drop. So it's a rapidly changing technology that you'll see more and more of as we go on. My name is George Tregay. I'm, as introduced, a retired volunteer. You have a contact information. If you do have follow-up questions, I work with Waste Reduction Partners here in North Carolina, and their objective is to help organizations improve their energy efficiency. So thank you, and I'll take questions or turn the thing back over, and we'll close out the program.
Great. Well, George, thank you. That was a really important talk that you gave, and very helpful. Rob Gilliman, I realize we're running out of time, but perhaps we could go 5 minutes extra and take a few questions for any of the speakers.
Sure, I have questions for everyone. So the one for George, he says, would you consider doing a complete energy analysis of a building before implementing any changes or making any investments?
Okay. Yes, you probably want to have an overall strategy so that you know where your primary investments are going to be. That said, I think you can still jump in with a narrower focus for like a lighting upgrade because those can really provide payback in a couple years, and it's easy to justify regardless of whether there's other aspects of your facility that you're considering. But do the full survey if you can. Lighting is definitely something you can launch into and be pretty safe about making good choices.
Okay, a question for David. Are there any green sanitizers that meet FDA food code requirements, which can be used in kitchen and on food contact surfaces?
Interestingly, I'd mentioned this new technology using electrolyzed water. There's at least a couple of companies that have that certification using, again, just electrolyzed water, not even a typical agent. In fact, that's a technology that's been used in kitchens for several decades now. So I would take a look at those. You know, I can't think of any chemical ones, brand names off the top of my head, but you could look at Tresano and Genion, and I'll include that in my notes, because they're both very effective. They meet the standards and very cost effective.
Great. Two quick ones for Dan. One has to do with the EPA's Food Recovery Challenge. Do you know if that pertains to hotels? And what is your take on composting for hotels?
Regarding the first one, yeah, I believe that hotels can participate in the Food Recovery Challenge, and I think it could be a very good spur to move the program along in hotels. Regarding composting for hotels, I think it requires a little bit of work, but there are indeed some systems that are effective. If you're a small facility, You could buy worm bins, and I can't remember the name of the company, but there are, you could buy worm bins, and the Hostling International in Boston actually is on a path to recycling about 60 pounds, composting about 60 pounds of food and coffee grounds per day using that system. There are bigger systems for hotels. It requires a little bit of labor. It also requires a little bit of space. But there's a company in New Hampshire, and I can't remember the name of it, that offers composting for institutions, including hotels.
Great. So another question for George. It has to do with the LED lamps that create FM frequency interference. Is that an issue that is widespread, or has it been handled?
I don't have an answer for that. I think the Energy Star does include some radiation criteria, and I have seen it explained on websites that the possibility is there. The quick answer is, if you've got a candidate bulb, just try it, and you know, as soon as, with an FM radio, you'll hear the static significantly if it's a problem. I'm not aware that it's a broad general problem, but it's a watch out before you go buy 1,000 bulbs.
Okay, and then one last question for David. It has to do with this conundrum when a facility mentions or notifies customers and its staff that it's moving to non or less toxic products. Some people may ask the question, you mean we were using toxic products to begin with? And is there a response to that?
You know, I think the best response is not to bring up the whole idea of toxic versus non-toxic, because we're still using chemicals. You know, and there's still the potential, if you were to drink it, of hurting yourself. So it's not that what we were doing is bad, but that we can do things better. So I like to talk about, we're moving to green products that clean effectively and are less impactful on the environment, and that we're just getting better, and not get into that whole fear of toxicity. Now, when talking to the staff, just explain that, hey, we're using products that weren't available 5 years ago or last year. You know, this is the newest and the best, and we'll be changing again someday as they get better. So I try to take a positive approach as opposed to saying what we did in the past was bad.
Great. Well, Dan, I think that's a good place to end it.
Rob, if I could jump in, somebody asked about in-house composting. I now have the names of the two companies. If you're looking for the Worm Factory 360 bin, go to the Nature's Footprint website. And if you're looking to a composter that doesn't use worms, that's more mechanical, go to the Vertal US, V-E-R-T-A-L US, that's a company, and they produce the CityPod composter.
Good. Well, Dan,
Rob, do we have any other questions?
I think that's what we have right now, so I think it's a good place to conclude.
Okay, well, for people still in the audience, thank you very much. If you want immediate access to the presentations today or anywhere in the webinar series, please send me an email. If you have other questions, feel free to call me or to call the other presenters today and from the other 5 webinar series. Please contact us if we could be helpful. And thank you very much. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, George.